We have an ever-expanding universe every single time we do a show. Jim, it seems like we're adding and multiplying like triples. What's up with that?
That's pretty cool, man. I love how the big happy family keeps, the big happy fleet keeps growing, right? So it's just more bodies, more great conversations, and super cool to see it. I'm excited.
Isn't that true? For everyone who's joining maybe for the first time, this is Continuing Conversations, which is a podcast, everything about Star Trek Adventures RPG. I'm Michael Dismuke with Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG, proven by the numbers and statistics. I'm not just blowing steam here. And Jim, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then why don't you pass the baton, and everyone will introduce ourselves and get this party started as we discover a really cool subject today.
Nice. Oh, very nice. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for the Star Trek Adventures role-playing game published by Modiphius Entertainment. Also a science fiction and fantasy writer, but we're here to talk about Star Trek and Star Trek Adventures, so let's focus on that. And I'll just go clockwise around my screen here, so I will pass the baton over to Jessie.
Hi, I'm Jessie Earl. Many of you may know me as Jessie Gender on the YouTubes. I do videos about Star Trek and LGBTQ issues in Star Trek and geekdoms and all that stuff. But more relevantly to this conversation, I wrote some of the character packs, part of the character packs for Star Trek Discovery Season 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you. And then next, we got Roxanne.
Hi, my name is Roxanne Thompson, and I play all kinds of games. I'm a big fan of Star Trek Adventures, and for a couple years now, I've been doing some of the layout design for many smaller things for Star Trek Adventures and a couple bigger ones. But yeah, love it.
Awesome. Glad to have you here as well. Next, we got Al.
Hi, Al Spader, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures, and I did some work on the Discovery character packs.
Brilliant. Thank you, Al. And then finally, Aaron, bring us home.
I'm Aaron Palier. I'm also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures. I kind of do a lot of different things. I've written missions, but for Discovery, I did the science and technology sections and a lot of the starship stuff that dealt with the starships, not the art.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then for the crew packs, you specifically did the Discovery stuff on at the end of the packs, the Discovery, and then for the upcoming, or actually, I guess by the time this episode comes out, it'll have already come out. But the season 3 crew pack, which will have the Discovery A in it, that comes out mid-May. And but right now, even though we're recording at the end of April, by the time this episode comes out, you will have already gotten that goodness in your hands if you choose to go buy it. So,
and everyone should be suitably confused or impressed. One of the two. I don't know.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I guess the spoiler is already out what this episode is about. It's obviously about the Star Trek Discovery campaign guide and the two character packs that have come out so far, and it's amazing. I'm going to tell my own little testimony. You'll hear about my history with Star Trek Discovery. Because I'm such a diehard original Star Trek fan and Voyager and Deep Space Nine and TNG, that I admit it hit me hard, the different pacing for Discovery. Anyone who knows me knows my brain just couldn't adjust to it. And I've been talking about it on social media because, again, I had the opportunity to work on some of these too. And so I had to go rewatch it. And recently, after I got the Discovery guide and read it in one day, after I got the new campaign guide, I said, let's watch it again. And I used it this time as a cliff notes with the show. And I'm like, even today, my wife, she's like, you watched it again? I'm like, I'm telling you, I picked up stuff I never picked up before because now I have all the definitions. I have my little playbook here. I don't have to be tapping on memory alpha while I'm watching the TV. And it actually made me appreciate the show even more. I started season 2 already yesterday. So I just want to say a thank you, big achievement for everyone who worked on it. And today what we're going to be doing is actually picking it apart like me and Jim always do, trying to get as many Easter eggs out of you as possible, get into your brain. I want to talk about Roxanne. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of the graphic design of Star Trek Adventures over the past couple of years. We have you here as an expert. So, Jim, I don't even know where to start, because why don't you go ahead and take it with the questions, since we're all part of the creative collaboration here. Where do you want to start with this agenda?
Yeah, so I think it would probably make sense, just given the cast that we have in front of us, who graciously, willingly to join, spend their time with us here tonight. I think it probably makes sense to focus on the crew packs, and then maybe we can save the book for another conversation. Maybe get a different mix of people in here, since there's a huge cast of people on that book, and certainly related to everybody here. I was super excited that Discovery book is the most diverse group of writers that I've had on any project so far, all across, all the different spectrums and lifestyles, et cetera. And I'm super excited about that, right? But I'm super excited about this group too, because you were also gracious enough to work on the crew packs. So let's focus on the crew packs, and let's just, go around. I'd love to hear everybody's perspective on and again, I'm not doing this to pat myself on the back, but like when you were given the opportunity to work on these characters, and I tried to do my best to give everybody cool assignments to work on, like, what was your initial reaction, and why did you say yes to working on this? And again, I'll just go clockwise around my little screen here, and I'll start with Jessie. What was your initial reaction?
I was ecstatic, like freaking ecstatic, when you asked me, because like this is the first time I've actually ever been officially, hopefully the first of many times, to be paid to actually do something Star Trek, which was absolutely wonderful. I was so excited. But in terms of like the actual assignment, so I wrote Michael Burnham in season 1 and 2 crew pack, Stamets in season 1 and 2, and then L'Rell, and then in season 1, and Jet Reno in season 2. And one of the coolest parts of it for me was trying to create the characters and have the characters evolve between their versions that I wrote for season 1 and 2, and have that reflected in like the stats and the descriptors for them, instead of it just being like a copy paste, which would be like an easy way to just say, all right, I copy paste these characters from one season into the next season. I like sort of asking the question, like, where was Michael Burnham in season 1? How do I put that into her character design? And then in season 2, like, what has changed? Like, where has she changed? How did her stats change? How is that reflected in how the game is played and some of the abilities that she has? And it was such a really interesting way to like think about a character in a sort of RPG sense, and think about like their evolution and their arc of a character in like literal stats of a character. Like, did her command go up? Did it go down? I thought that was just a cool idea and assignment. And then also getting to like come up with stuff for Jet Reno, who is just a weirdo who I love, was also really cool. So
great character.
Yeah, cool.
I just got kudos out to the Jet Reno write-up, just because she's my second favorite character on the show. You might guess from my background who the favorite is. For those who are just listening, it's Felipe.
And Jessie, I'm pretty confident I got this right, but maybe gosh, it's been a while now, so maybe I've missed it. But I was confident you had written up some of the stuff for season 3 as well, didn't you?
Yes. For them, as I believe I did. Yeah. I think I also wrote Stamets and Burnham for that as well. So. Yeah. Okay. And so it's great. I love the work that you did. I was so grateful. But I have to admit, I'm going to be fanboy all over you for just a minute, because it was a really, I was so nervous when I reached out to you initially, if like you would be willing to write for the game. Because like I watch your channel, I watch your show, I love your stuff. It's so fascinating to read your perspectives on just all the different things you talk about. It means so much to me to listen to that, and to have you be such a big voice in the Star Trek community, right? And I was like, gosh, I wonder if she's into Star Trek, into Star Trek Adventures. I wonder.
Right? Like, I wonder if she's into the game, like, because I don't remember you talking a lot about the game on your show. Like, you talk about the novels, and of course, I got a lot of the novel writers involved in the game. So I figured like the Venn diagram had to be pretty close to a circle, right? So I reached out and I was like, oh, is she going to say yes? Is she going to say yes? And then you said yes. And I was like bouncing off the walls, because I was so excited that I was going to be able to get you involved somehow. And I hope that we have an opportunity to get you into it again, because there's just so much great stuff that we can be working on.
Oh, most definitely.
So, I wanted to just take a moment of this show just to say, look, I had the fanboy all over you, because I was so excited that you said yes. I'm so grateful you said yes, because I think you're a great voice, and I'm so glad that you're being able to contribute to the game. And I can't wait to see what else you come up with, or what we come up with together.
Thank you so much. So. You're making me all feel all embarrassed. I'm gonna hide behind this dribble here.
Oh, don't do that. No.
I appreciate. No, it was an absolute honor. I'm a big fan. I was a big fan before, and a big fan now. And the one sad thing is I haven't had a ton of opportunity because of the pandemic to play a bunch, but I have played, and it's a lot of fun. So I was very much honored to do it. Oh,
cool. Super cool. All right, so I'll put my fanboy on the shelf for now, and I'll move on to Roxanne. So Roxanne, of course, you didn't have an opportunity to do any writing actually, but you were right in the weeds with me all throughout all three of these projects, even going back a couple of years now to when you first started working on some stuff for the game line. But specifically as far as Discovery, like I just love to hear your perspectives. Like when you get assignments, is it just like another assignment, or you're like, oh, Discovery, yes? What was your reaction to
I was super thrilled to get to work on the Discovery stuff. I have enjoyed Discovery quite a bit. I've had a lot of friends that were kind of on it for a while, kind of like Michael was saying earlier about, it took them a bit to really catch on to it, but it really hit something for me in as far as modern sci-fi and the new take on it that the show offered. And so having worked on some stuff for other eras, I was really excited to see what some of the other designers were putting together for the Discovery stuff. And I was not disappointed at all. I love the clean look of it. I love it's just so, to me, to my eyes, it is cleaner. It pops off the page. It really evokes that aesthetic of future for us, but retro for what we're looking at. It's got a very modern and yet retro futuristic feel to it. It's kind of hard to describe, but I really love the elements that were put together for it. And I had an awesome time. Discovery, the cast of characters on Discovery is probably my favorite out of all of the series. I grew up watching Star Trek with my dad, and so it was a very bonding thing for us. And so I have all that love for like 90s Trek and earlier. But Discovery feels kind of like my little Star Trek family. I love it. I love the progressivism that we are able to see with it in this day and age. And so I was psyched. I mean, I have other ones that I think I've talked to you about where I'm like, if that comes down the pipe, I would love to tinker with that. So yeah, it's never just another job. It is with this line. Star Trek Adventures is actually my favorite role-playing game. So, and I don't play it nearly as much as I want to, but yeah, as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh yeah, come on, bring it to me. Yes, please.
I have a question because I heard some chatter on social media and really want to talk about the origin of the art, the character art in here. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Where we pull this art from? I know Jim's talked about it before, but I'd like to, go into that a little bit, Roxanne.
Well, we pull a lot of that from Timelines, don't we? From the Timelines art for the Star Trek Timelines game, and they have. I will say the art style that Timelines uses is really effective for print media as well. It's great in the format that it's intended, but us being able to use it really adds to kind of, I love the rendered style of it, where it's not just photorealism. It's kind of got that painted look or that sketched look. And I think that really adds to, I think the juxtaposition of that with the modern looking elements of the line art and things like that, the designs of it's not LCARs, but essentially they're screens and things like that we get to play with in the layout. I love that art so much.
Well, the character, I want an oil, about probably I'd say a 5 foot tall oil painting of Felipe Giorgio, because her costume is so kick butt.
The emperor costume, man, and I'll say fitting that into that page was a bit of a trick, because that flare on that skirt, I was like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do here?
My favorite one is I love Jet Reno in the season 2 one. Her look is great. I'm literally looking at it right now, and she's got like the smock on. on. It's
wonderful.
And the face mask, right? Or the goggles.
Yeah.
I'll just add that we so a shout out. I know we'll do shout outs at the end of the episode, but I'll do a shout out right now to Joe Russo and the whole team over at Star Trek Timelines. We have built a great relationship with them over the last 5.5 years. Their artwork has been in most of our crew packs from the beginning. I think maybe DS9 and Voyager and Enterprise and some other ones. And we that's just relationship building over the years, and they're super generous with their artwork, and we're happy to provide artwork if they ever need it. Like, I don't know if they need our stuff, but we've got plenty of art if they want it. But we're happy to trade advertising space, and this is just a way that we're trying to build relationships with all the different licensees. Right, we've got connections with Star Trek Online, we've got connections with Eagle Moss, we've got connections with Star Trek Timelines, and the fans notice it, right? Like I see it all the time on social media that we're not, Modiphius isn't kind of this monolith, right? We're reaching out to other licensees and trying to, I don't know if we're trying to so much bring it all into like one shared universe. Of course, it is a shared universe, right? Because it's all Star Trek. But I think fans really notice when the different licensees connect to each other and you start seeing the same art appearing in different places. I think they really appreciate that. And I can guarantee you're going to see more of that in coming products. So rest assured.
Yeah, and I think we all know the effect too, where, say, for instance, we played RPGs where we don't have our own character drawn, and the same day our friend draws the character, all of a sudden you sit hours spending looking at it, trying to say, oh, this adds a depth to the character. So likewise, I felt that when I got the, we write them up and we send the data in, and then when you come back and you see the finished art piece, all of a sudden I'm looking at it again like, whoa, did this art or the write-up match the art and the intensity of the character? I just want to, to have a little cutout standouts of them and play with them. So just excellent job. I mean, having that relation with Star Trek Timelines and integrating it in here, it makes the show even more real and makes the RPG even more real.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I could go on about that, but I think I'll save that for a little bit later. So thanks, Roxanne. Really appreciate all the work that you've done for the line, and love hearing your perspective. So thank you. So Al, let's hear from you. What was your reaction to getting the work off the cuff there?
When I heard the characters that you wanted me to write up, I was super excited. I thought that it would really help me learn the game mechanics a lot better. Specifically the advancement system, being able to see Saru through 3 seasons. I really sat down and looked at, what does it look like when I trade out a talent for another, or an attribute for another, and how did that play out through the 3 seasons of the show? Of course, being able to write the Kelpian species was really, really fun. And I think we got a lot of flavor into that. And it was, really awesome that I got to do Christopher Pike's first sheet. And, I can't wait to see what we're all saying about him in a month and a half, But yeah, it was a good experience. I think that, I think when you're talking about character arcs, New Trek does that with some of their characters very, very well. And I think that that transfers to Star Trek Adventures quite readily, actually. And I feel that even more after going through this experience. Doing Ash Tyler was really weird because we had, is he a Klingon? Is he a human? How do we merge these 2 species together and get kind of like the best of both worlds? So it was a lot of fun.
No, that's great. I love it. I thought I really loved the work that you did on the Kelpian species layout, and then some of the other stuff you did for the campaign book. No, did you do? No, you didn't do any campaign. Sorry, they're all mixing together in my head. But no, the Kelpian stuff was great, and you just seem to have a really good handle on it. And I was thrilled that you were able to pull all that together. So it's always nice when I send stuff to Nathan for mechanical review, because he's the system designer, right? He had so few notes. I was like, I'll hit it out of the park. So that was really great to see it. So thank you, appreciate it. Great stuff.
I thought like trying to figure out how to do like the threat ganglia piece, like how would that work in the game? was a lot of fun. And when the GM gets threat, now you're detecting the coming of death. You know what I mean? So so we really worked that in there, and I think that I can't wait to play a Kelpian. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, interesting. Something you mentioned about character advancement. I was just reflecting on it while you were talking. It's like it just dawned on me that like for other RPGs out there in the world, especially for instance D&D. I'm not going to hide from it, but I know that there's a lot of discussion about people talking about, oh, my character advanced, my character improved, I leveled up, I did all this thing, I grabbed these feats, et cetera, et cetera. One of the weird things that I don't see a lot of people talk about on social media about this game is how their characters are advancing mechanically, right? I can't even imagine, I can't even remember the last time I read somebody talk about, oh, I earned an advancement, or I earned a milestone, and I got this new talent, or I changed this statistic, or I don't know if it's because like I know that the advancement system in the game is pretty modest, right? But I have to feel like after 5 years of this game being out, and I know there's some long running campaigns out there, I have to wonder if people are starting to hit the upper limits of the game statistically. But I haven't really read a lot of reports of people saying, "Oh, the game's broken now that we're all maxed out or whatever." Any thoughts on that?
I'm going to speak to that because I've been playing a game since 2017, and right now in my mind, some of the characters I'm thinking about are actually Al and Aaron's characters who have had major changes. The difference, I think, between Star Trek Adventures and other games is that Star Trek Adventures, in my opinion, matches more real life. You change, you develop, you have different interests at different time depending on the circumstances you're thrown into. Yeah. So when we talked about this before, Jim, where, oh yeah, I guess I'm really good at operations. Oh yeah, but I'm also good at writing. And there's different times in my life where I've had to use those skills in a job and start. Right. So we're all well-rounded, but depending on what you're assigned. And I think about Aaron's character in our game went from being the counselor to the chief science officer. In a period of about 1.5 years of being on the ship. And it was and it's not weird at all. It was a very natural evolution into that, right, Aaron?
Yeah, it was. It was a challenge for the character to get out of the mindset of being a counselor and being outside of the chain of command, so to speak, because, you might have to take people out of positions of command. But once he's gotten into the science officer's position, the way he thinks tends to actually support that position anyway. Yeah, it's just a natural adaptation.
So with that in mind, then, Aaron, because you're the example that Michael brought up, just thinking in terms of that character, clearly the character has had significant growth and progression and change. But in terms of like the raw mechanical aspects of the character, did the numbers change all that much, or was it just shifting some stuff around, or like did you make use of milestones at all in your game?
Yeah, we've used milestones, but I think I've only adjusted upwards one department, like that he's had, just one, and then everything else I just don't care. If it doesn't affect, if it's not a part of the story, it shouldn't really be a big deal. Yeah. Like we developed a talent for the character because he had a theory about something, and now that whenever that theory kind of comes into play, I can roll a challenge dice to see if it matters or not, to gain momentum. But that's about it. To me, it's more important to develop the character's story rather than stats.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and I think with that's well said, because you develop the story first, and then you have the stats match the story, which I think is very strong in Star Trek Adventures, that story narrative. Al?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, and you see that a lot in values, right? The value changes as you are progressing. And I mean, working on this character pack, I actually went back, and a lot of the values that I put on the characters are actual quotes that they said in the shows. Because how do you learn about a character the best? It's through their interactions and through what they say, right? So especially with Christopher Pike, because I really wanted to nail that. Like I went through and rewatched all of Discovery season 2, and I just was jotting down quotes that came out of his mouth, and I'm like, oh, that would be a good value. Oh, that would be a good value. So I highly recommend that. Like, think about who your characters are when you make them, and if you have something that you say quite often to your crewmates or whatever, make that a value, right? Because that is clearly something that's meaningful to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do the exact same thing, Al. I find that characters will tell you what their values are if you just listen to them, right? So you just sit there and listen. And like I've got my old Alpha Smart Neo sitting right next to me every time I watch a TV show, and I'm just like, I'll hear a piece of dialogue and I'll pause it, jot it down, and then I'll go back and listen to it a couple times to make sure I got it right, because canonically we want to make sure we get the quotes right. But yeah, totally. I love the fact that you do that too, because that doesn't make me feel so weird. Constantly just trying to record the transcript as I go. So yeah, good stuff. So Aaron, let's go back to you and just talk about a little bit about writing up the discovery for the purposes of the game.
When you asked me to do it originally, I was like, yes, I have ideas. Mm-hmm. Because every episode of Discovery I go through and I take down notes about the technology anyway. Yeah. Because I've always been interested in the science, technology, and starships of Star Trek. That's kind of been one of those things I've had since I was a little kid watching TOS and trying to figure out how duotronic computers worked, because that was interesting. But I had all these notes, and I thought, okay, I'm going to write up Discovery. How do I do this? Well, it's only made about 10 years after when the Constitution class was launched. So it's only going to be marginally better, slightly better from an unimproved Constitution. So around average stats, I had that down there, but it's obviously a science vessel. I didn't want to give it all of its points in science, all of its bonuses in science, because no Starfleet vessel is really that specialized. But it made sense that as a vessel that would be using the spore drive, that it would have some sort of engineering bonus as well, that there would be something there to support the engineering teams that were required for this experimental piece of technology. So a little bit of engineering, way more science, because of the whole 300 independent science missions that it could undertake at the same time. Mm-hmm. For its feats, though, a lot of my notes from season 1 and 2 were lots of shuttlecraft. So obviously an extensive shuttlecraft trait. I wanted to give the spore drive its own talent, mainly because it was so different from other forms of propulsion. And therefore I had to write rules for it. And that's where all the notes from Nathan came in on developing the spore drive. But, improved sensors, advanced laboratories, all those made sense for the starship to have as its base. And then a test bed, right?
Yeah. I'm going to geek out for a second, Aaron, and ask you. I love asking him the science questions and the really minute questions. So on my last rewatch of Discovery 1, they basically, and am I correct on this? They kind of built Discovery around Paul Stamets too. It was his experiment. It was his astromycological research that it was all about. Did that factor in at all when you were designing the ship?
Sort of. USS Glenn and USS Discovery were the two ones that actually had the spore drive installed on it. But Crossfield itself, we actually also supposedly see in canon, not in Discovery. We see it in actually Star Trek 3. When Enterprise and Excelsior and Space Dock, there's a very familiar looking starship in the back that Discovery was based on. The design of Discovery was based on. You see its nacelles kind of poking out from the interior spine of Space Dock.
This is why I asked. I'm sorry. It's amazing.
I'm gonna go run and watch Star Trek 3 again.
You'll see the little nacelle kind of poking out of the background, and it's because its Discovery was based on a test model of an Enterprise for the motion picture. I think it was.
I think it was for Planet of the Gods. It was like concept from like one of those failed script Planet of the Gods. I think something like that. Yeah.
So they used that test model actually in Space Dock to fill out Space Dock, and then they used that test model to base a design for the Crossfield class.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so, everyone who's listening, aren't you glad I asked? This is why I ask Aaron these questions, because he comes up with the stuff that's making me have to spend an additional 5 hours of TV watching.
So while I do think that Discovery and Glenn were designed with the spore drive in mind, the Crossfield class itself, at least the original Crossfield, wasn't. it was a very different class. It was more of a generalized science vessel. And then those two spacecraft were more fitted towards the spore drive. That's why it actually has the rotating disc and all that.
Yeah. Interesting. So everybody who's watching this, go crash the Paramount Plus server and go rewatch Star Trek 3 and fast forward to the sections of the space dock and go see if you can see the crossfield in the background there. And then as long as Aaron, as long as you've got the floor here, I'd be curious to hear what's your perspectives about going from season 2 Discovery to creating the statistics for the A.
Am I allowed to give spoilers on that?
Well, I mean, by the time this airs, it'll already be out. So I think you're free to chat about it.
So one of the things that came up with season 3 of Discovery is that the way we designed starships for Star Trek Adventures, the base space frames, is based on year of launch. How advanced it is based on what decade it came out. So when you suddenly jump from the late 24th century to the 32nd, the system didn't really work that well. So I had to come up with a new way of looking at system stats, and that would apply directly to the season 3 of Discovery. And I came up with an idea called IMTech, interstitial. I forget the exact wording that I used, but it's pronounced IMTech, and it's a way to readjust the system stats on a starship. Basically, when it's refit with this technology, all the system stats drop back to lower values, and you might immediately go, oh no, my starship won't be able to succeed as well. It's not as good. No, but wait a second. The IMTech system uses this very advanced computing technology. It's as big of a jump from transistor computers to duotronics. This IMTech allows your ship to roll 2 dice when assisting, and you take the better of the 2 dice as your ship's assist. If both dice result in a critical success, they both count. If they both result in a critical failure, they both count. That's the only drawback.
Ooh,
but basically,
that's tough.
it makes it so your ship stats don't suddenly become like 28 on a D20.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's brilliant.
I'll be curious to hear what the fans think of that once they start getting it into play and on their tables and stuff. So yeah.
But all starships, I think, starting in the 28th century, have IMTech computing technology installed, and they have these new stats.
Starting in what century? In what century?
I think it's the 28th century. I don't have my notes right in front of me.
Well, I'm just thinking about temporal wars. I mean, we may need to, if we ever talk about temporal wars a little bit more, see who else has that technology.
Well, and the temporal stuff does come involved with that technology, in that it uses these closed time-like curves to help compute future possibilities. And that's how the computers are able to actually get an answer out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make everyone jealous right now. Yeah, he plays in my game.
Awesome.
I think about time travel stuff often.
That's good. We might have to tap into that pretty soon. So thank you, Aaron. I always appreciate everything you just said. So let's wrap up this first initial question here and go to Michael. I know that you were excited about doing some work on this. So tell us about your experiences when you got the assignment.
Well, I weep into my pillow for every assignment I get. I mean, so that's just my same reaction every time. Like, yeah, and it's not even just for me. It's because my dad, raised me up on Star Trek, and he's from the South, and so just the fact that my name is in any kind of Star Trek thing, he's like, "That's my boy over there is around Star Trek," So that alone is just kudos enough for my dad. So that thank you for that, Jim, being able to have that moment. What I loved were the characters I was assigned, though, because we talk about evolution of characters through a season. First, I was given Lorca. His evolution was death by the season 1. Hello, everyone. So that was easy. But actually, he was one of my favorite characters to create, because I was able to create a talent for him called Menagerie. And it focused purely on that lab that I was fascinated with. All those weapons. He had a Gorn skeleton. That was to me. I know that could have been. They could have spent 3 episodes in that room alone if I could just get my hands on every single piece in there. So I said that has to be one of his talents, and I really wish we could have. That's going to be another good other dimensional kind of story if we can explore that room some more. And then you gave me Captain, she became a captain in one of them, but Ensign Tilly. That was interesting because honestly, I'll tell you right now, she was not my favorite character when I first started watching the show. But when I had the assignment to write her and really watch her over 3 seasons, she really became my favorite character, one of my favorite characters, because she is the closest we got outside of Lower Decks showing the cadet to ensign experience. And I thought that was really interesting to watch that growth. So one thing people will notice if they compare the 3 packs is that her command skill goes up 1 point each season. And her skills also change from a little bit more inspiring and supportive to commanding. And I wanted to reflect that, and then surprise what happens. She ends up becoming a Starfleet Academy instructor. So I just thought that was really, really fun. And then, of course, I'm in love with Felipe Giorgio. I take Stan Lee's take on this, to quote another franchise: there are no villains, only fallen heroes. And I really think that she symbolizes that. And her stats were scary to create. I don't think I've seen another stat block where someone could just rip you apart. I mean, just her skill level of fighting. She brought Michelle Yeoh into the Star Trek universe, everything we know about that fantastic actor's career. So I'm going to I like the way I described her. I don't know if anyone caught it, but I described her as a tornado of razor blades going through a forest. And after it's all over, she's standing on the corpses of her victims, which are shaped like bonsai trees, because her death is elegance. Her power is this elegance, her wickedness, And I think watching her change because of her relationship with Michael Burnham over the 3 seasons, in the season 3 pack, you start seeing it. She's not losing her ruthlessness, but it's how she's applying it now. And the Federation softened her. And that really amazed me. And we know that, they're writing a whole show for the character, according to rumor, hopefully gets, produced. But I think, honestly, she's the best thing to come out of Discovery. And so you giving me the opportunity to write that character, I was just, the only one who you could have given me that I would have been just as thrilled would be Jet Reno, who I think needs to be in a more prominent position on every single show. And then the other one you gave me, which of course made me really, was Spock. You gave me that scared me, because I was like, oh, if there's ever a time fans are going to burn me, because I've been pretty diplomatic and never got in trouble with fans in 5 years of blogging. When you gave me Spock, I was like, oh, this is it. This is where it all ends. So I was scared out of my mind trying to do anything related to Spock. So I don't know if I played it safe. I definitely watched it carefully, and we'll just see how people react to my take on Spock.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be really curious because, of course, as of this airing, right, we don't have the license to do anything Strange New Worlds. When this comes out, Strange New Worlds will have premiered, right? Because it premieres in 8 days or something, and so we can't, do anything for Strange New Worlds. But of course, the Enterprise and Pike and Spock and Commander Chin Riley, like, they were all in Discovery, so we can use those characters. Sort of, we can kind of slide them in, and that's exactly what I did for this crew pack. And I'm just really curious to see what fans think of those characters, at least our rendition of them, right? Because we were able to get them into the crew pack. But I think Spock was great, Pike was great, and I wish we had the room to have given Commander Chin Riley the full blown character thing, right? But just in the context of season 2, I felt, and this may be on me, that we didn't see enough of her. So maybe that was an oversight on my part. Maybe I should have just gone with it and just snuck her in there as an extra page. But I felt, at least based on what we saw in the show, she was really a really strong supporting character, but not a full blown lead in her own right. At least in the context of Discovery. Obviously, she'll be a major character in Strange New Worlds. So hope
you were right on that. You were right on that, because I actually had to do the support characters, including her, and also Linus, who's one of my favorites in that. But I think, to your point, with both Spock, and I'm sure, Al, you probably went through it with Pike, and I went through it with number 1, is I didn't want to commit to anything. So I wanted to leave it wide enough that it wouldn't be too big of a conflict come Strange New Worlds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, great. Well, that was a great round robin there for initial reactions. And I just in the background, like I tried very hard to stay engaged and listen to you all, but I was also trying to think of, like, what the hell do I ask next? Like, what's the next question? Like the crew packs, as they are great pre-gen characters for you to use at your table if you want to play, be player characters, or with a little bit of adjustment, you can turn them into NPCs and drop them right into your game. But
I have great follow-up questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so in fact, I'm going to challenge each one of you to get creative right now and do some yes and improv, because I think one of the challenges when I get a crew pack is, okay, this is nice to have, but am I really going to integrate it into my game? So I do go into okay, which of these characters could I use and how would it be plausible to do that? I know I had the pleasure of being able to introduce the original series characters to our campaign, and it worked out phenomenally. We were able to get Cisco back from the Bajoran wormhole, so I'm going to go around and play yes and with everybody and say, if you were to look at this and try to incorporate some of these elements, what would your yes and story be for your game? Let's start with Jessie.
Oh, got to start with me right immediately. I mean, there's a lot of fun you could do with specifically like where you're at in different parts of the timeline. Like one of the parts that doesn't really get explored, but I would love to see is that like time between the beginning of Discovery, the Battle of Binary Stars, and Michael Burnham when she ends up on Discovery, where she is a prisoner. We don't get much of a sense that she did anything, but we all know as Star Trek fans, we can be like, she had a whole adventure while she was locked away for mutiny. So that could be a fun spot to get her at where she's at her lowest. Like maybe your like game comes across her ship that as it's not transferring to Discovery, and she gets sort of brought onto the ship as like one of the people who's a mutineer, and people sort of looking at her differently than we sort of see her character now. That would be a lot of fun. I also like Stamets is a character who I also really enjoy in season 1, and like seeing his arc to where he goes, because he is kind of a jerk to everybody, especially in season 1, but you get a sense of like his distance from Starfleet. So you can sort of like play with that idea of like he was someone who was kind of drafted into Starfleet in a lot of senses. Like he was sort of brought in, and it was the only people that would funding is the wrong word because we don't have money in the future, but like we'll give the resources to his work, and him sort of having regretted that. So that might be an interesting character to play with before he goes on into Starfleet, and meet him where he's like just a scientist who's working on some weird wacky mushroom research. And he doesn't like Starfleet. That might be a fun place to encounter him.
So you're talking about if people chose to play in the Discover area, how to get into some of those gaps there. Okay, I'm going to expand it even more for the other people answering. What if you're playing in a different era even? Could you even yes and this pack? Roxanne, what would you say on that?
Who in another era? Who would I be? Who would I like to use to try to mold into another era? Ooh. I really, maybe it's just because we didn't see them in any other eras, but I would love to see Saru or a Kelpian in another era and explore that, knowing that they were in the past. Now I know all the stuff that happens through the course of Discovery that kind of explains some things, but I would love to see a Kelpian on DS9 and just see how they interact with that whole economy and that whole, because to me it feels so foreign to their way of life. But yeah, I would love to see Saru or even his sister or a character like his sister kind of play off those tropes and bring them into something like a DS9 where it's kind of this war torn, but also I live here on a space station. I'm not constantly traveling. I'm just living in space instead of living this, bucolic lifestyle on a planet.
You just made me think of something really cool. Like, what would the Kelpians think of the Dominion, given their experience with the Ba'ul? Like, there's very similar vibes there. Would be interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Kelpians are only in the Star Trek Discovery character packs, right? The actual builds for them, Jim. Is that right?
No, they're in the campaign guide too.
In the campaign guide too. Okay, yep. I wasn't sure about that. So
yeah, they were kind of previewed in the crew pack, and then they were included in the campaign guide too.
Cool. Yeah, definitely want to see more Kelpians. With that said, Al, what about you? Yes, and how could you envision using this even in different eras if you had to?
So I think that what I would do is I would have someone just under Voke or Laurel get a hold of some vision from a time crystal and start planting things for future people to know, to try to stop some event that they saw coming, and make it be like this wild goose chase, Easter egg hunt type thing, set upon by the by the houses of Laurel.
Love it. Got it. Klingon era. Okay. I'm not going to ask you any more questions about that. I'll let your creative juices work on that. Aaron, what about you? If you had a yes and.
There's tons of things you can use. The mycelial network. It's not just for travel, folks. It's also for things coming into our universe of different kinds of life forms that exist in the mycelial network. It also just tends to suggest that there are other layers of subspace that are similar to that might be like fluidic space, but stranger. Things where the laws of physics aren't exactly the same and where dark things lie. It's that kind of idea that there's space right next to ours that coexists and things can bleed over. And the mycelial network is great for that kind of idea. The other thing I can easily see to use would be the Klingons. Everything in season 1 and 2, the Klingons have these very different looking ships compared to what we see in previous series. Well, I give an explanation why, at least in our write-ups, and I think that the ramifications of them using those ships. And again, I don't know if I want to get how much spoilers I want to get into with what I've written for the campaign guide and whatnot. But there might be ramifications, or they find different things about their past on those starships that can have ripple effects even centuries into the future.
And if I understand the mycelial network correctly, too, it's not only messing with subspace, it's also messing with time, because we saw Discovery make a jump into the future in getting back to the mirror universe, right?
It's because the mycelial network isn't just strictly coexistent in 3 dimensions, it's in 4. So you can technically just move through space and time in it, and theoretically you can move between universes as well.
So there's oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say there's a wonderful book called Star Trek Discovery Dead End List, where that by sadly the late Dave Gallanter, who literally wrote that you could jump between universes. It's a universe hopping novel within Discovery using the mycelial network. It's a really good novel that I'd recommend.
It makes I have not read that, but it makes complete sense if you're able to move through time as they do, that would be something that you could also do.
So really the possibilities of any character from any era, any game master, any gaming group, touch the right point of the mycelial network wherever they're at, could have an interaction with Discover characters. Discovery.
Yeah.
Characters. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Or multiple different versions of Discovery characters, or multiple different versions of themselves.
That's what I was thinking too.
The fungal road is one that can be traveled many times.
Ride the magical mushroom road.
Stamets dropped the word multiverse, and so he could have shown up in multiple places at different times to have adventures that he's not even aware he had. That's just what I'm saying. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, thanks. So, in my position, I don't have a lot of time anymore to play the game or to even run the game. I tried last year. I ran a bunch of game sessions and it went really well. But like right now, I'm just so crushed with work that I don't have time to play. But what I do have time is I have time to read everybody's fantastic drafts, right? I read your manuscripts, I read your drafts as they come in. I'm so excited every time I read them because like all my writers and all of you are included, right? You always manage to drop in so many great plot seeds and plot hooks and ideas onto every page that, like, as the writer, that the writer on hold right now, I get so many ideas. And then I read social media, right? And I listen to the fans and I listen to what they're talking about. And some fans will just throw like a one sentence comment out there, or a little thing here or there, and that'll spark some thoughts in my, like, oh shoot, looking at the line as a whole, right? You're not just looking at one book. You're not just looking at the Discovery book, right? You're looking at the Discovery book. What happens if you take the Discovery book and you add it to the Shackleton book, or you take the Discovery book and you add it to the player's guide. Now what kind of possibilities do you have? And then like everything just blows up exponentially in my head, right? And like, just listening to you all talk, it's like, yeah, Michael, the mycelial network is a big key point for all kinds of story ideas, because like, who's to say that there's not a big nexus somewhere in the Shackleton Expanse, tied into all those spatial anomalies and all that weird stuff going on in the Expanse that, Aaron did a great job writing up in the book. Who's to say a whole bunch of ships don't escape the mycelial network and end up somewhere in the middle of the Shackleton Expanse and have to deal with the Vinchari or the Calmerans or something, or going the opposite direction. Maybe the Vinchari stumble upon a way to get into the mycelial network and get out of the Expanse, and now all of a sudden they're let loose on the rest of the galaxy. And what does that mean for the balance of power, right? So as a game master, we've been trying so hard to build a toolkit for you all with all these different products, right? Take a piece out of Shackleton, take a piece out of Discovery, take a piece out of the player's guide, and then find new ways to combine them together, and then just, tell stories that, the, TV screen and the movies just can't even imagine. And then, also related to that, if you're talking about like how to use these characters in different eras, what I really love doing is now that the books are out there, and I'm able to step back a little bit and kind of forget about the whole process of making them, is like, oh yeah, like, if you kind of divorce the setting from the actual story, like, Discovery of course had a very specific story that it told, but if you kind of like put that aside a little bit and just look at the setting, like that setting is like about a decade before the original series. Like all those ship classes, all those Klingons, all that stuff is happening when Kirk and company take over for the original series. So, who's to say there's not a Cardenas class ship right off screen when the Enterprise is doing some stuff? Who's to say that you can't run a completely fulfilling original series campaign, like in the classic original series Kirk uniforms and Spock and everybody, but you're on the Shenzhou type of ship, or you're on the medical ship. I just drew blank on the name of the ship.
Hiawatha class.
Yeah, exactly, the Hiawatha. And so like for the first time, we have a whole bunch of new canonical ship frames that we can use going into that movie era, like from the original series all the way on out. Like I know for a long time the fans, we didn't really have anything canonically other than the Constitution class. Until you get to the movies, then there's the Miranda, and then there's the Excelsior, and the Oberth, of course. But now you've got
Oberth.
What's that?
I was just saying, gotta love the Oberth.
Yeah, had to get a plug in there for the Oberth because Michael's determined to run an Oberth campaign sometime and bring some love to that space frame. But so even if you go like backwards toward Enterprise, there's just a wealth of story potential there using the material. And then if you go forward through Strange New Worlds and then into original series and then into the movies even, there's just so much stuff to work with. Like even if you're, and I know there's a very vocal segment of fans out there who don't like Discovery because they don't like the characters or whatever, which is, fine. If it's not to your taste, then that's fine. But if you, like what Michael did at the very beginning, he said, he rewatched the series using the book as kind of cliff notes, and it gave you a different level of appreciation for the series. Maybe that's a way to approach it, is like, look at the setting contents and the setting material that you can play with, and then see what you can do with that, with your new games.
Well, I'm always the first one to say too, writers who have the privilege of writing for like a Star Trek TV show can't go back and complain about the past. They have to make it work. And so I really challenge people who are gaming also, don't spend all your time complaining. If you want to, use the mycelial network to explain why what we saw happen on screen actually wasn't reality. If you want to go that way, keep it positive and move it in that direction. If you're not happy, take your opportunity to rewrite.
The way, what I've always said is the only people that have to care about canon are the people writing the show, and even they can get wibbly wobbly with it. If you, it's one of those things where like people arguing like Discovery isn't canon. It's like, well, like if it's not for you, that's totally fine. You don't have to like say it's part of the way you view the world because it's a fictional world. It's totally fine. I think that's fun. But I love like the connective tissue that you were saying, that what it brings between like Enterprise and the original series. Like you were talking, Roxanne, earlier about the visual look. Like I love how the blue uniform kind of matches both with what we see in the original series, but then also with Enterprise, and it feels like a good middle ground between those. I think it's just nice to like find places to play in all of that.
I like trying to think of the Discovery era as being like the last part of the era that had the Enterprise and the Earth Romulan War in it. That after Discovery, there's such a sea change in the Federation and in technology overall that's what progresses into the original series, into the movie era. There's a visual difference, and it's because of the changes that happened right during the era of Discovery.
Yeah, the way I always thought about it was like the Klingon War. Like after the Klingon War happened, like Michael Burnham's whole thing was like, oh, we need to like reaffirm who we are. And so that was like when Starfleet, because we don't see like the Enterprise in that uniform until Discovery season 2 after the Klingon War. So maybe they were just like, went back with the admirals, went back and was like, yeah, we need to like reaffirm that we are the peacekeeping force. And so they do the uniform change. Like, we're going to go bright colors now. We're doing bright colors today. That's our new thing. So yeah, it just makes sense in that way.
I mean, in the same vein too, what I pulled from Discovery was, I feel that was really the birth, in my opinion, of Section 31 being like, we got to be ahead. I mean, we have Klingon infiltrators who look like us. We have no choice but to also have this underground that's doing something. I also think it was the birth of the Temporal Prime Directive. It wasn't formed yet there, but like the Department of Temporal Investigations, with everything Stamets uncovered, that's where, if two things, Lorca died, sure, this is a TV show. He evaporated.
That intel proven otherwise.
Right, evaporated into energy in the Mirror universe, you know. So who knows if you want to reintroduce Lorca as a villain? I think he's totally open play right now because of the way he died.
Or
but
Prime Lorca's still out there.
Yeah, but even well, maybe they never said, right? Did they?
No, the only time we've ever seen Lorca, even like Prime Lorca, even appears in one of the novels. He does appear, and that's actually not canon, obviously, but it's the only like official Star Trek branded thing where he's ever appeared in. So
see, there you go. And then Felipe Giorgio, remember, the minute she steps into the Guardian of Forever, the Time Gate, she's yours. And who's not to say that she really isn't working for Department of Temporal Investigation? I mean, you just don't know, right? And
hard to say.
Double, triple agent or something. So to me, when I love a character, I work hard to get them into my game and try to come up with as many creative ways to do that. So that's why I was happy to have these characters available now. I'll figure out a way to get Jet Reno into. I don't know how yet, but
and she's so unflappable, right? I mean, she could fit literally anywhere, and she'd be like, yeah, okay. And then, whatever, give me the snacks, and I'll fix anything that needs to be fixed.
As long as there's Twizzlers, I'm happy in any future.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. Snacks bring me.
I do have to say, based off that, who did Jet Reno? Jessie, you did her?
I did her in season 2 and 3. Yeah.
I will say that the only thing that I was like, I would have done differently, her medicine skill. I think she's a natural medicine 4 at least. Even though she has engineering, I was like, oh no, she's
holding that Tellarite heart in her hand.
I was playing with that and I thought about that. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my stats so I can like remember real quickly what I was thinking ahead of.
You gave her an engineering 5, science 4, security 3, and medicine 2.
See, my thought was, because she said like engineering is just like medicine, so I gave her a high engineering, but I would also think like you can use things like insight to offset that and use it in that way. So that was like my thing. But you're not incorrect in it. But I was just thinking the way she describes it, it's like she not necessarily good at medicine, but she's really good at engineering and placing it into a medicine field. So.
And you did give her field medicine, to be clear. So you did give an engineer field medicine to use unconventional ways to save people, because that's where I was when that's happened on the show. All my attention went to that character. I was like, wait a second, who is this character? So
yeah, boy, I'll tell you, season 2. Like I'd have to go look at the list. I don't remember who all the writers were on season 2, but whoever were the writers on season 2. They did a fantastic job of introducing characters. Like I remember, like when Pike was first introduced and Pike first came on screen, I was like, okay, I am 100% invested in this guy. I will follow him into the whatever concept about the maelstrom, right? The nebula. Like this is a leader. He is on top of things. And then they did a great job introducing all the characters, like Pike and Spock and Commander Shen Riley. But yeah, Reno too had a great intro. Like that whole scene with the kids and the medical stuff and the whole story that she had. Like they were firing on all thrusters, in my opinion, in season 2.
She was the best character to write values for. Like one of my favorite. It was hard because like she doesn't have like a lot of like good like statements that like work as values throughout this, at least in season 2. Other than like helpless is a shitty feeling, but it's not forever. So I had to like come up with a few that were like indirectly from her, and I just had a lot of fun with that. So like one of my favorites is nothing is more reliable than duct tape and dilithium, which I love that one. It was just a fun little bit.
Yeah, you had me fooled. I thought those were all of them were.
No, the cover. I went through every single scene. I went through every single scene that she was in, and if it's hard, it was really hard with her to like directly pull. But I just sort of like, obviously she's a big duct tape fan, so I sort of like fudged it a little bit to make it work. But
yeah, and gadgetry. You gave her gadgetry, which is
yeah. I figured that would be the perfect one.
Yeah, I like looking at all those focuses and see what people come up with. So that's really really cool. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just gonna say, I think I've got one more round of questions for everybody, and then I don't know if you want to wrap it up at that point, or if there's anything else you want to add. But my question for everybody that I'd love to hear your perspectives on is like, what is your number one hope that folks would get out of this, out of these crew packs, either just enjoying them as a fan, or if they're actually looking to approach doing something with it in their games, like of all the hopes that you have wrapped up in it, what would you like? What's the number one takeaway that you'd like people to get from it? And I'll start with Jessie.
I think for me, because it's what I got out of writing them, is just a new appreciation for the characters. I've been a Discovery fan since it started. I understand that, a lot of people's criticisms of the show, totally get it. And like, again, you can like it or not like it at your own leisure. But for me, I've loved the show. But what I really love most writing all of these was just like finding out more and thinking more about like the things that drive these characters forward, especially like Michael Burnham. I related a lot to her in the writing of both versions of her that I had to do, or all the versions of her that I had to do. And I think like using these characters from this show in your stories, and like finding ways to explore their characters in your stories, whether they be someone you're playing or as an NPC, like find out like, oh, what are the things that make these characters tick? Because I think that if you really, really look at it, the Discovery writers have just drawn out these characters' arcs really well. And I think you can find such good places to like slot into those arcs in your stories, and like find these characters at different spaces in their arcs and tell different stories that tell something about them. Because much as I love Star Trek's past, a lot of the characters remain static for a very large amount of time in those shows because they were more episodic. And so I think these different packs do is allow you to capture these characters, how they change over the seasons so drastically. And I think you can put those in your stories and find interesting stories to use them in those ways within your adventures.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Nicely said. Roxanne, what are your thoughts there?
Well, what she said. I really do think, because again, when it first came out, like I said, like Jessie just said, I was a fan immediately. It hooked me very quickly. But I had some very close friends who did not like it at all. And it wasn't even necessarily the characters. They just couldn't get past what they thought they were getting and didn't get. They wanted it to be the same. And it never even tried. It did never pretend to be what previous iterations of Trek were, and they just couldn't deal with that, I guess. But if anything, I hope they look at this and they say, wow, this is the technology, the characters, the depth of the characters, how it's not just something that it's not just this character that I don't have to care about. No, you do. You see these characters grow, and it makes me appreciate what the work that went into the characters all the better. And I really do hope that people do use that to explore it, especially people who may not enjoy Discovery right now, but they like the game, and they're like, well, what can I do with this? And maybe it'll inspire people like Michael to, the book made him go back and watch the show. I would love for people to gain a deeper appreciation of the entire era of Star Trek and stop trying to hold on to whatever, they really truly thought they were going to get and didn't get. I want them to see the value in this era and the hard work that has gone into creating these characters and telling these stories and finding a way to put that in their game and enjoy that the same way that so many of the rest of us are, because I think every iteration of Trek has wonderful intrinsic value. And if we just judge it by its predecessors, we're never going to really enjoy the full breadth and depth of what is being brought to us and the true vastness of the universe that they've created. So I hope they play it and they're like, okay, this is good. Sorry, I almost cussed, but this is good stuff,
Yeah.
Maybe
the hubris. Hubris.
Yes. Yeah. So so not too different from what Jessie said, but yeah, very, very much just enjoy it and find an appreciation for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, Al, I know it's a tough act to follow, both Jessie and Roxanne there, but add your 2 cents here. What would you like to see folks get out of it?
Selfishly, I would like to see more Kelpians in the game. People share your builds and whatnot. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But I really want, if you sit down with characters that are in the season 1, 2, and 3 pack, just see how milestones work. I see a lot of people asking, well, how do I advance? How do I level up? That type of thing. This is like a textbook way to see how the milestones work as you are moving through from a character's perspective through the seasons.
I got to add to that. Al's spot on about that fact, because this is the first pack to do that. I mean, this was a bold move. Honestly, Jim, when you asked us to do this, I don't know how everyone else felt, but I was kind of like, this is new. This is weird. Is there really that big of a difference? And this is I don't know if this is even a first for any RPG from a major franchise to do something like this. Like, I remember all the years I played Marvel Superheroes RPG. The only change I remember was Green Hulk to Gray Hulk, Spider-Man with the black costume, and that's all we ever really got out of 20 years of all that. So that was, I think, a bold maneuver on your part, and it's worth people taking a look at in detail what happened there.
I think it's really cool because, like I was saying too, it's like if you took Deep Space Nine may be different, but if you took Next Generation season 1 Worf to season 7, they might change a little bit, but they would be relatively the same for the most part. Same with Voyager characters and even Enterprise even a little bit differently. But for the most part, if you take a character in season 1 and season 7, most of the previous Trek shows, they'd be for the most part the same. Whereas in Discovery, you take it from season 1 to season 2 all the way to season 3. Those are 3 vastly different characters, which I really enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I was hesitant to do it because we hadn't done it before, right? All the other crew packs are just one shot and done, and didn't really break them up by season. But for Discovery, in my opinion, season 1 and season 2 and season 3 feel like very different shows. Even though there's threads throughout all 3 of them, all 4 of them at this point, they felt very different. Partly because the cast of characters changed so much from season to season, especially in season 2. Lorca's gone. You got Pike and Spock and Una in there, plus some other characters, and it just felt like, here's a great experiment to do 2 things. First, we get to bring in a bunch of new characters and opportunities to play with them. But then it was like, well, we really haven't had a chance to do a product where we talk about that character advancement and actually illustrate it. Like in the core books, of course, we talk about it, and we talk about spending milestones and improving. And in the Klingon book, we talked about an alternative system for advancement, but we haven't really had an opportunity to show it in practice, right? And so I thought, why not? And from a purely boring business perspective, the risk was pretty low, right? Because the cost to put one of these things together is not that high, and it was like, in terms of like risk, it was a pretty low risk. It's not like we were printing, thousands of copies and like they're going to sit on the shelf somewhere because nobody wanted them. Right. PDFs are pretty safe bets, especially for this line, because they do really well. And I'm gratified to see that. But so it was an experiment, Michael, and it seems to be working. Like I've heard generally good feedback, but I'll just be curious to hear as it continues to get out there and people check it out.
Consider it your spore drive.
Yeah. But I'm always trying to experiment with the line and do different things. So anybody who has ideas, let me know. Fans and writers alike. I'm always eager to push the boundaries and see what else we can do with it. Al, I fear we got off track a little bit here. Anything else you'd like to add before we switch over to Aaron?
If you're looking to use the spore drive in an era where it's forgotten, you could always use the scientific method, integrate that into your game as maybe a long-term goal that you might be experimenting with, because your game is your canon, and take what you like. And if you want your ship to have a spore drive, and you want it to kind of make sense in canon, have somebody accidentally stumble upon a spore and then work on using the scientific method to discover how to do it. Aaron, do you think that would be a good use of that?
I think it would. That would be a very good use of the scientific method as presented in the core book. It's there to develop new technologies or something that's so outside of the box that an extended task isn't really the appropriate thing to use. So yeah, that would definitely work.
Cool. And Aaron, as long as you have the floor, why don't you go ahead and tell us what would you like folks to get out of the packs?
Well, I would actually start by saying the having the different season packs didn't seem to affect me at first, because I was just working on Discovery, and there isn't a lot of change in the ship itself between season 1 and 2. It's the same vessel. It has the same mission profile. It has the same equipment, effectively the same crew. But where it really became different, where it became a challenge, was going from season 2 to season 3. And that's obviously something that needs to be seen yet. It hasn't been published as of when we're recording this. But there was a lot of work that went into showing how Discovery changed as it moved into the into the far future. So there is quite a bit of change there. What I would want people to get out of these crew packs, I would say, hey, look at these crew packs. They're from a time that's right before the original series. Even if you hate Discovery, you can look at these crew packs. You can get ideas about characters or possibilities based on these characters that will influence characters that go on to serve during the TOS era. That this is how the TOS era can kind of progress. This is where it comes from, and here's your destination. How can you put this together? And I think we do a pretty good job of trying to knit Discovery and TOS together, both in these crew packs and in the Discovery campaign book. I think that does do a good job of showing how the time progresses, how everything moves forward, especially after the Federation Klingon War. I mean, it's such a cataclysmic event that things obviously have to evolve and grow from there. So even if you don't like it, use it. You can use it to build story.
Yeah, absolutely. Great thoughts there, Michael. What are your perspectives?
Yeah, I'll start with an analogy. I'm going to compare it, Discovery, like the comparison between old country and new country. And, I'm an old country fan. I like old country. But I found out Dolly Parton is, Miley Cyrus's godmother. And then all of a sudden I have to say, well, then I got to listen to Miley Cyrus, and then all of a sudden I'm into new country. And it's a different perspective. It's a different rhythm. It's a different beat, but there's history that's built in here. So, I'll go back to, I think my biggest revelation was we had an interview once with Scott Pearson. Of course, he's the line editor for everything Trek, it seems, from Simon & Schuster, including for Star Trek Adventures. but his daughter was also in one of our session zeros, and she loves Discovery. And so one of the things I try to approach life with is humility and be like, okay, let me try my best to see things from a different person's viewpoint. And I said, give it to us. Why? And by the time she was done, I was like, this is purposely meant for a new generation. I mean, yeah, you could try to placate the Dolly fans forever, but we're dying out, you know? And so I understand that there's marketing behind Star Trek, and they're trying to create a franchise that stands the test of time. And so she gave me a really good perspective on it. And I came back to it. And I think this book really nailed it, the Discovery Campaign Guide and these guides, because the universe is really, we know, infinite and huge. Don't fall in love with one thing. I mean, there's too much to love. So I think this is a good stepping point into that. So as a Star Trek Adventures fan, I'm looking at it for opportunities to integrate into the larger universe. Maybe I'll never have the time to get to all the games I want to get to. I know that as a fact, but I definitely have a million stories cooking. And when the time's right and one trip into the mycelial network, I'm going to be using these guides. So really, you know, just again, infinite diversity and infinite combinations is what we're doing.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think, you know, just to wrap this up a little bit, it took me a little while to get into Discovery. I was not quite sure what they were doing with it initially, and it took me a little while to warm up to the characters. I was trying to figure out, like, who am I following here? Like, everyone's got kind of a weird thing going on, and Lorca's not quite right, and Burnham's not quite right, and it's just, and they killed off Giorgio, and it's like, who am I latching onto here? And the first character I really latched onto was Tilly, and I really grew to just love her because I think she wears her heart so completely on her sleeve, and she's so earnest and so human, and I think that's the one thing I love more than anything else about the Discovery characters and the way they're written is that I think they're really the first show where people have like real human conversations with each other, like real hard stuff. And you can't just go away from it and go off to the next adventure next week. Like you are still on the same ship with the same problems, with the same people. I mean, it's like DS9 to some extent, but I think Discovery really doubles down on just the human, honest conversations that they have with each other, and just like really working through the hard stuff that I think, you know, honestly, a lot of people don't like to do. Right?
Well, and I'm sorry to say it, you bring up a good point before I forget it. It's because you talked about Deep Space Nine. I think what's different for this generation of watchers, we got to remember we're in the streaming generation. Yeah. That's a whole different way to watch TV. And as we know, Deep Space Nine is more popular now because it serves up better streaming than episodic. And so what happened, the one disservice I actually do think is done is I actually think they need to dish these out like Picard and Discovery. Just give it to us all at once. I know that there's reasons why they don't do that, but it does affect for me, an old episodic watcher, that I have to remember next week. I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. I'm supposed to remember the plot lines from last week. No, I need to have a Saturday with a bottle of wine and binge watch. And that now that I'm binge watching back, and now that I'm going back to watch the seasons and binge watching them, it makes more sense to me. So for for old fans who are watching Discovery or Picard, watch it like a streaming and don't watch it like an episodic. That changes the whole rhythm of how it comes out.
Yeah, that's interesting, Michael, because I think I don't know that I articulated that in my brain prior, but having watched them when they were first airing and waiting week after week after week, and then going back and watching the whole thing in the space of 2 days, like the second rewatch hit me a whole lot different. And I don't know if it's because like I knew what was coming, or if it's because, I don't have to wait. I can just watch this one long 12-hour movie, in one, go, as opposed to having to wait 12 weeks to chunk it out. I guess I'm curious, did anyone else feel that too? Or is it just kind of a...
Well, that was the thing that was weird for me. I mean, I caught like Enterprise when it was still on, so I wasn't like completely new to watching Star Trek week to week. But it was surprising to me to see the backlash at the show when it was first coming out, like in episodes, just because there were a lot of people was like, oh, all these characters don't understand Star Trek. They don't like fit the values of Star Trek. They all seem to hate each other. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the arc of the show, right? That they had already planted seeds of like, she's going to earn her redemption. I had like seen that in like the first few episodes, like, oh, they're planting these little seeds of like the whole arc of it is her having failed at Star Trek's values in the first episode, and then her kind of going through and reaffirming them by the end of it. And I think it was for a lot of Trek fans who were sort of used to like every episode sort of reaffirms it by the end of the 45 minutes, that having that be reaffirmed over the course of 12 hours as opposed to one was what they got stuck up on.
And so I think the hero's journey for the first time. That's not a movie. We see the hero's journey on a Star Trek show, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know we could go on for hours talking about this stuff all night. I know all of us could go just days with all this stuff. But I think after an hour plus, we should probably call it a night here and say thank you so much for everybody joining us for this conversation. And Michael, I know that you it's always important to shout out people. So let's take an opportunity just to go around here again. And who would you like to shout out to? Michael, why don't you start just to set an example here?
Sure, no problem.
We'll go backwards around.
We're all about celebrating the fans and the brick and mortar stores out here, continuing conversations, continuing missions blog. So we have Keith Jacobson from the Facebook group who wants to shout out Around the Table Game Pub in Linwood, Washington. He says it is the best game store he's found in the Pacific Northwest. So that's quite a mic drop then. Their website is www. Why do I say that? That just aged myself. It's attgamepub.com. So awesome. That's our shout out to the brick and mortar this week. Let's pass it over to Aaron. Who do you want to give shouts out to?
Oh man. Summit Games in Lansing and AFK Games in Lansing. Those are the two places that I tend to go to. Because they're the local ones. But I like them both. They're both fantastic brick and mortar stores that serve both comics and games. So can't go wrong.
Nice, very nice. And Al, any shout outs you'd like to give us?
Chromatic Dragon Games in Somersworth, New Hampshire. They're about to start their first ever live session of Star Trek Adventures here in a couple of weeks. So been hitting me up and getting pointers and things like that. So we're hoping to get that rolling in a couple of weeks.
Cool. Very cool. Roxanne, how about you?
I've recently moved in the last year and a half in the pandemic. It feels recent. So I don't have a good brick and mortar store to shout out here, but if I may be a little self-pluggy, I currently work for a candle store in just east of Indianapolis called Epic Adventure Candle Company, and we actually have a few Star Trek related scents for anybody that's interested. We have a tea Earl Grey hot, we have Ponfar, and we have Vulcan. When I saw Ponfar when I walked into the store, I was like, I don't know what that's gonna smell like, but okay.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get one of those.
Yeah,
my videos.
Can you send us the link after this?
Absolutely, please? Absolutely. It's for anybody listening, it is epicadventurecandles.com is where, and we ship worldwide. So or at least anywhere in the US that I know of. But yeah, we have those. And then just a real quick shameless self promo. We have a second season of our Star Trek Adventures actual play show called The Voyages of on twitch.tv/RookandRasp. That's going to kick off in, I think, the second week of July. So
send that link to us so we can list it on continuing missions.
Absolutely. We'll do that. We'll do that.
Roxanne,
thank you so much.
I have to ask, do you make the candles in-house or do you?
We do. I actually just poured a tray of Earl Grey hot today because we were out. But yeah, we make them all right there in shop.
Oh, that's awesome. So the only reason I asked is the instant you talked about Star Trek candles and you're talking about the scents and stuff, the line from DS9 jumped into my head where they were talking about what does Worf smell like? And they said he's kind of peaty with a touch of lilac.
Yeah, that's right.
If I remember it right. So it's like
I might have to make that candle and throw that in there. Yeah, if anybody's going to be at any Gen Con or Origins, we're going to be there. So in fact, I will be there selling candles. So if you're looking for any, just look us up.
All right, I'm going to have to put in my plug. Make sure to make an Umok candle too.
Okay. There we go. Just send me a list. We'll work on it.
I need to buy some candles now. All right, Jessie, who would you like to shout out to?
Unfortunately, I'm on the same page as Roxanne. I moved to Seattle recently, during the recently being a year and a half ago, during the middle of the pandemic. So I haven't really gone out to many brick and mortar stores around here. But what I will shout out, we were actually talking about them before we went live, was Women at Warp. It's a wonderful podcast, and I know many of the people on Women at Warp, like Eliza, do a lot of Star Trek adventures, and they do a lot of plays of that as well. I think they also do some podcasts of that separate. So I'll just shout out Women at Warp is an amazing podcast that I love listening to, that I know has a lot of people that love Star Trek adventures. So go listen to Women at Warp. They're a great podcast with great people. So, and
plug yourself too. You're quite around on social media, so please feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at Jessie Gender on YouTube. I do the YouTubes. So like I said, I do make videos about nerddoms and geekdoms, a lot of Star Trek. And I talk about social and political issues and LGBTQ issues within fandoms and stuff. So as we use science fiction as a jumping off point to talk about real world issues as the best science fiction is. So yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome. And so glad to have you all aboard. I can't tell you how excited I am to have such a diverse. I mean, look at this group. This is diversity. This is IDIC in action right here. And I'm just so excited that you all decided to say yes. So thank you. So shout outs. Unfortunately, like a couple of you, I don't have a local friendly game store. I'm sure that there's a bunch in the DC metro area. I wish fans would tell me which ones I should go to, because the best one that I ever had was a Game Parlor in Chantilly, Virginia. They closed doors a number of years ago, so pour out a 40 for them. They were my haunt for the longest time. I remember working at the mall down the street. I could close up shop, close up my cash register, lock the door, and be down the street in 10 minutes before they closed at 10 o'clock. And I would buy a bunch of stuff, and they would know just to wait for me, because I'd be getting there as fast as I could. As long as there was no traffic, I could get there before they closed. But it was a dark day when they finally decided to close the doors, and I just haven't found another good one yet. So I'm looking for a new home for my gaming needs, outdoors. Beyond that, I want to send out a shout out to Joe Rousseau again, and the folks at Star Trek Timelines. Thank you so much for your partnership over the years, and for your fantastic artwork that we get to use in our crew packs. So thank you for that. And also thank you specifically for these crew packs. Thanks to Mihao Cross, who did the interior design, the initial concepting of what the Discovery layout would look like. We try to do a different theme for each main era of play. So he did the initial design work on the just the book and the design, and of course Roxanne took that and realized it in full for the crew pack. So thanks to Mihao, and then thanks to Roxanne for taking that vision and extending it on. So Michael, why don't you bring us home? Let's wrap it up.
All right. It just gets better with time and mycelial networks. So fantastic. Thank you everyone for another fantastic continuing conversations. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, IDIC.
Yep. Live long and prosper. Be safe, be well. I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Thank you, everyone.